I discovered a hidden message in my family's past. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I found a letter that shattered everything I believed. It slipped from a velvet pouch behind the false bottom of my grandmother's music box, a walnut box that wheezed lullabies in dust. The ink was the color of tea, the edges feathered like leaves. On the back, in Rose's careful script, a single line: "For the one brave enough to look." It felt like a dare to choose honesty. I wiped my hands on my jeans and unfolded the page. "Claire," it began. My name, written decades before I was born. "There is something you deserve to know about who we are and how the truth was bargained away." The attic seemed to lean closer. "Mom, Eleanor, kept this door locked except during spring cleaning. Uncle Henry called it the family museum, a place for moths. They hated when I lingered. Bad for your allergies," Henry would say, pinching the bridge of his nose. I read the next lines aloud to the empty room. "If this is in your hands, it means I failed to set things right." I pictured Rose at the dining table, wrists thin, the soft tap of her ring. She died in 2001, when I was 7. We were not close. I remember lilac perfume and careful silence. But here her voice traveled through time and found me, the one who never fit the mold. The bulb hummed. My phone buzzed. "Mom, you're not digging up old junk again, are you?" she asked, breezy over a tremor. I looked at the photograph boxes. "Just cleaning," I said. She exhaled. "Good girl." I slid the letter into my jacket and opened an Easter box. On top lay a photo I'd seen 100 times. Grandpa with his tie askew, Rose in pearls, Henry young and severe, Mom laughing with her hair feathered high. For faces. I flipped it over and saw fresh tape holding a second layer to the cardboard. Beneath, something thin waited. I peeled the tape with my thumbnail and found a smaller photograph hidden behind the first. A bassinet in a hospital room, a nurse blurred mid-step, and a note scrawled along the border: "Baby R, keep safe." No date. No surname. No fifth smiling face to match the empty space Rose had promised. The attic felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. The floor creaked below. Someone had come home early. I folded the letter, pocketed the secret, and stepped toward the stairs as a key turned in the front door. And from the foyer, Mom's voice rose, closer than I expected. "Up here," I called, stuffing the letter into my jacket. Mom's footsteps climbed, each tread a metronome. She paused at the attic door. "Don't inhale too much dust," she said, cheerful but watchful. Her gaze caught the music box. "Haven't heard that tune in years." I closed the lid. "It's jammed," I lied. She crossed the room, boards complaining. "Your grandmother loved trifles." Mom stroked the box, then pulled back. "Let's finish and make tea." We passed frames in silence. Her small talk usually wandered: weather, errands, the neighbor's tree. Today she skipped straight to logistics. "Henry's coming for dinner," she said. "He wants to discuss the foundation gala." "The foundation that funds his company's apprenticeships," I said. "That one." Her mouth tightened. "Don't be unkind." I held up a baby photo, a stranger with my eyes. "Who's this?" Mom smiled too quickly. "A cousin's child." She reached to take it. I slid it into the to-scan pile. "We should label these," I said. She nodded. "Good idea." When she went downstairs for the kettle, I reopened the music box and peered into the false bottom. Nothing. I waited for the whistle, then pulled the letter from my jacket. "If you are Claire," Rose had written, "then time has done what courage could not. The accounting begins with a birth and a promise, and it ends with a debt." My skin prickled. At dinner, Uncle Henry arrived in his navy suit, smelling of barber's soap. He hugged Mom, patted my shoulder. "Our archivist," he said. "Find any treasures?" I set a stack down. "Maybe." He poured wine. "Nostalgia is a sweet trap," he said. "Best to keep the past where it belongs. Some things refuse to stay buried," I said. His smile sharpened. "Depends on who's holding the shovel." He ate, praised the roast, asked about my job. When dessert came, I slid the hospital photo onto the tablecloth. "Whose baby are?" I asked. Henry's fork paused. Mom's teacup clinked. "Where did you get that?" he asked, voice soft. "Attic," I said. "Behind a photo." He put the fork down carefully, like glass. "It's nothing," he said. "Old hospital photography. People wrote nonsense on borders." "Then you won't mind if I ask for the birth record?" I said. Henry glanced at Mom. and a hairline crack opened in his practiced smile. The next morning, I took the hospital photo to the library. Mrs. Patel at the desk remembered me from childhood reading contests. She printed a stack of microfilm instructions and pointed me to a humming machine that looked older than I am. I searched local births by the month Rose would have been young enough to have a baby, then by the year before, then after. Pages whispered under my fingers. Nothing for baby R. Not a single line. I held the photo to the light. The ink along the border had bled into the paper's gloss, but the capital R had a flourish I recognized from Rose's shopping lists. A hooked foot, a long spine. The handwriting matched. I wrote down 3 hospital names within driving distance during the 1960s and called the records departments. 2 had moved. 1 had a voicemail telling me to use a website that no longer loaded. I took notes anyway. Evidence matters when memories wobble. Marcus texted me a question mark. I sent a photo of the bassinet. He replied, "Weird. You think it's adoption?" I typed, "I think it's a secret large enough to warp a room." Then I stopped and deleted it. I asked if he was free for lunch. He sent a thumbs up. At Mom's that evening, the attic key was gone from its dish. I checked my pocket and found only lint. The music box was missing too. In its place was a square of sun-faded wood. "Did you move something?" I asked, keeping my voice light. Mom washed lettuce in the sink. "Just tidying," she said. Water hissed. I sent a few things to the church sale. "The music box?" I asked. She stared at the calendar as if it needed convincing. "Dust traps," she said. "You don't even like knickknacks." I dried my hands, leaned against the counter, and raised my brows at her. "I like that one." She turned to me, chin lifted. "Some things are better off out of sight." Her tone was gentle, but final. After she went to bed, I opened the liquor cabinet and found the attic key tucked behind a bottle of sherry. I held it up against the hall light, the metal warming in my palm like a kept promise. Then I replaced it exactly where I found it and wrote down the precise spot in my notes. Key hidden behind sherry. Motive to control access. Someone was moving pieces, and tonight I planned to move back. Henry called the next afternoon. "Your mother says you're redecorating the attic," he said, as if I'd painted the past a new color. "Be careful with old paper, Claire. It crumbles under clumsy hands." "Did you need something?" I asked. "Just touching base before the gala," he said. "You'll be there, of course." It wasn't a question. "I'd like you to help with the memorial slideshow for Mom." "Rose," I said. "You still call her Mom, like you're 14. He chuckled. Affection survives accuracy. I stared at the hospital photo on my table. "Who is baby R, Henry?" Silence, then a sigh. "Do we have to do this?" he asked. Rose had a soft spot for dramatics. She loved decoration, labels, flourishes, little games. Her handwriting was an art project. "That flourish is consistent across her grocery lists," I said. And the photo was taped behind a family portrait. "That's not decoration. That's concealment." He cleared his throat. "I'm worried about your tendencies. Your father left when you were young, and you chase ghosts to fill the gap." "My father left because he couldn't stop lying," I said. "Maybe that's our family pattern." He laughed, bright and brittle. "Look, sweetheart, I've run this family's affairs since Rose started slipping. If there were any illegitimate surprises, I'd know." The word landed with a thud. "You'd know because you kept the records? Or because you made them?" I asked. "Don't be insolent," he said, the silk ripping from his tone. "Drop it. There's nothing there." His voice softened again. "You don't want to hurt your mother." After we hung up, I walked to the courthouse. The clerk showed me how to search civil filings. I scrolled through liens and deeds, and then, in a year that should not have mattered, I found a quiet transfer. Rose had signed over a small bungalow to a trust with a surname I didn't recognize. The trustee was Henry. I copied the file number and took a photo of the screen. When I looked up, Henry stood in the doorway, smiling like he owned time. "Researching family history?" Henry asked, as if we were 2 tourists in a museum. I tucked my phone into my back pocket and smiled. "Just learning the system." He leaned his elbows on the counter, the picture of civic neighborliness. "Happy to help," he said. "Our family has nothing to hide." "Then you'll love this," I said, reading the case number aloud. "A bungalow signed to a trust you manage." "Why?" He traced an invisible circle on the laminate. "Estate planning." "Ordinary." "For whom?" I asked. "A friend of the family," he said. "You don't know them." He said it the way you'd pat a child's hand away from a stove. I wrote the trust name in my notebook anyway, noting the date, 6 months before Rose died. That night, I met Marcus at a diner bright as a dentist's office. He stirred his coffee until the spoon clinked. "So you think there's a hidden branch on the tree?" he said. "I think Rose buried something she couldn't speak," I said. I slid the hospital photo across the table. He studied it, then the margin. "The arm matches her handwriting," he said. "My mom has recipe cards. Same loop." "Henry was at the courthouse when I found this," I said, showing the screenshot. He said, "estate planning," and called the trust a friend. If there's a friend, there should be a beneficiary. Marcus pulled out his phone. County recorder's site. We searched. The trust had a P.O. box and a bland address. Another deed surfaced. A tiny plot on the edge of town transferred years earlier to the same trust, signed by a woman with a surname that made Marcus look up. "That's Aunt Lila's maiden name," he said. "She married Henry's college roommate." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning Henry could hide family assets using someone else's paper trail," Marcus said, "or pass resources off books to someone he wanted to keep quiet." We drove to Aunt Lila's for recipe cards. She handed us a tin and a tired smile. "Your grandmother baked when she was worried," she said. "Some weeks, the oven was our second son." The cards were dotted with butter stains and Rose's tidy loops. On one card's back, between vanilla and fold gently, was a phone number and 3 initials. R.J.H. RJH felt less like initials and more like instructions. The next day, Marcus texted a photo of his mother's spice shelf. "Recipe tin located," he wrote. We met in his garage, where the smell of gasoline and cinnamon made a strange duet. We spread the index cards like a deck of polite secrets. Vanilla custard, lemon bars, molasses cookies. At the bottom, a card with a bent corner stuck to another. I teased them apart. The back of the molasses recipe wasn't a recipe. It was a torn letter, written in Rose's tidy hand. "Henry, if you insist on keeping the accounts separate, then we must agree on what is owed." Underneath were 3 dates and 2 amounts, then an address I recognized as the bungalow street. The letter cut off mid-sentence. The torn edge was jagged, as if yanked from a notebook by a frightened hand. Marcus whistled through his teeth. "Accounts," he said. "Plural. Separate," I said, as in off the books. I took a photo. "And owed" implies a creditor or a promise. We went to the bungalow. It had a chain-link fence and a rosebush struggling against neglect. The mailbox still had the trust initials. No one answered the door, but a neighbor trimming hedges looked over and shrugged. "Caretaker comes Tuesdays," he said. "Keeps it tidy for the owners. Been empty for years." "Owners plural," I said. Marcus photographed the number on the curb. We walked the perimeter. A back window had a broken latch. A plastic bag stuffed the gap. I touched the frame, then withdrew my hand. "We're not breaking in," I said. "We don't need to." At the records office, we printed the trust's filings. I pressed the letter fragment against the page. The dates matched the transfer and a cashier's check Henry had signed. When we laid the papers side by side, a picture formed like a negative in a tray, edges first, then features. Rose had paid for the bungalow from an account Henry managed, and Henry had moved the title into a trust Rose could not easily reach. Why would he do that if not to hide someone? Marcus asked. I looked down at the torn letter again and saw a faint imprint beneath Rose's handwriting where a different pen had pressed through another page. 3 letters, almost invisible until you tilted the paper like a secret to the light. The imprint read the same initials we found on that recipe. The clerk at the archives slid a heavy index toward me. "Adoptions are sealed," she said, "but docket headers aren't." I searched by year, then by the bungalow's block number, then by Rose's maiden name. Nothing, until a column marked Juvenile Court in R.J.H. The case was 49 years old. The entry had no parties listed, only a petition date and the word guardianship, later amended to adoption, closed. My pulse took on the microfilm's hum. I wrote the case number and the judge's initials. Evidence has a way of clearing its throat when you're finally listening. Marcus arrived with coffees and a grin that meant he'd found something. "Your baby are hospital shot?" he said. "Look at the light fixture." He zoomed into a pixelated halo above the bassinet. County General had that model in 1975, not 72. He pulled up a newspaper archive snippet on his phone. a donor profile showing the maternity ward remodel year. So the photo is at least 75, which meant Rose was 50, an age most would call impossible for a birth and perfect for a handoff. We visited the newspaper morgue. In the seen and noted column from that spring, I found Rose in pearls at a fundraiser. The caption mentioned a surprise announcement after dessert. The next issue carried a blind item about a prominent family greeted by an unexpected visitor and an even more unexpected request. My stomach nodded. Who was the visitor? I asked the librarian. She shrugged. Gossip aged badly, she said. At home, I assembled a timeline on my wall with blue tape. On the left, Rose's journal dates, the fundraiser, the courthouse transfer of the bungalow. On the right, Henry's cashier's checks, the trust creation, the recipe card letter fragment. I drew thin lines where events whispered to each other. A pattern emerged like a water stain, faint, inevitable, widening. It pointed not to a mother with a secret pregnancy, but to a mother who had sheltered a secret child. My timeline looked like a web tightening around one name. An unmarked envelope slid under my door, warning me to stop. The envelope held a photocopy, a page from a parish ledger with names smudged by time, and a neat margin note in the same tidy hand as the recipe card. R.J. H. Baptized under care of St. Bartholomew. It read, the date 2 weeks after the fundraiser. Next to it, sponsor, R.J. Hollis. Not Hollis the family name, not Henry, but a surname that echoed in local business listings from the 70s. A contractor who donated quietly and often. Beneath the ledger note, someone had underlined a single sentence in pencil. Support pledged until independent. I showed Marcus at our kitchen table. He tapped the page. If Hollis sponsored the child, the H in R.J. H. is likely Hollis, he said. Rose's or could be Rachel or Ruth. The J, a middle name. June Joan. He glanced at the bungalow address. Is the house near Street Bartholomew? It was 6 blocks away. We walked the route, passing tidy porches and the sagging eaves of small lives. The church's office smelled like lemon oil and paper. A receptionist listened as I explained, gently, that we were trying to correct a family record. Archives are private, she said, but you can leave a letter for the archivist. I handed over copies of the ledger page and my contact information. We're trying to correct a will, I added. Half true. The receptionist's eyes softened. We sometimes get contact preference forms, she said quietly. Sometimes they're blank. Sometimes they're a lifeline. Back home, Mom called. Henry thinks your curiosity is charming, she said in a tone that meant the opposite. But it's making him nervous. I swallowed. Does it make you nervous? A pause. I don't like you digging through ashes, she said. People choke on what they stir up. That night, I heard the back door creak. I came downstairs to find Mom on the hearth rug with a shoebox, the fireplace mouth black and hungry. She froze. What are you doing? I asked. Tidying, she said as Ash sighed. I reached for the box. She pulled it close. Claire, she said, some promises outlive the people who made them. I lowered my voice. And some secrets outlive their usefulness. Her eyes filled. She set the box beside the grate and struck a match. I grabbed pages as flames climbed, knowing one truth would survive. I beat the fire with a damp towel while Mom covered her mouth. Paper curled like leaves in winter. When the flames died, the room smelled like old photos and regret. I saved 4 pieces half-scorched. One was a corner of an envelope bearing Street Bartholomew's address. Another was a note in Rose's hand. If Henry insists, then the house stands until the debt is honored. The third was a carbon copy of a cashier's check. The fourth was a clipping from a newsletter thanking Mr. H. for a quiet contribution to a family in transition. Whose family? I asked. Mom shook her head. I promised, she said, sinking to the rug. I promised her I'd keep Henry safe from himself, and I promised Rose I'd keep that child safe from Henry. I sat beside her. Safe how? She stared at the empty hearth. Henry can't stand a threat to his story, she said. He would rather salt the earth than share it. We made tea because that's what people do after almost burning the past. We try to sweeten the smoke. Tell me everything, I said. She folded and unfolded a napkin until it became a map of creases. There was a girl, she said. The daughter of someone Henry competed with. Your grandmother felt responsible, or guilty, or both. There were loans. There were conditions. And there was a promise that the child would have something in her name that Henry could not touch. She lifted her eyes. But Henry found ways to touch everything. Marcus joined us, quiet for once. We spread the scorched pieces in the ledger copy and drew a line down the center of the table, Rose's promises on one side, Henry's detours on the other. We need a plan, Marcus said. No confrontations without proof. We collect the chain. He listed tasks. Request the court's docket header. Write to the church again. Ask the neighbor about the caretaker's day. Photograph the bungalow's title history. Contact the bank about cashier's check microfilm. I added the gala to the calendar. Public stakes work on Henry, I said. He hates mess in front of donors. Marcus nodded. We make a clean, chronological story, he said. We invite him to answer it on the record. We would build a case so airtight Henry couldn't wriggle through. I spent a week building a binder that snapped shut like a verdict. Tab 1, Timeline. Tab 2, Property Records. Tab 3, Financial Instruments. Cashier's check numbers. Bank microfilm request receipts. Tab 4, Parish Ledger Copy, with my handwritten note about the initials. I added a page protector for the scorched envelope corner. Every page had dates, sources, and simple words in large print, so even a defensive mind could follow. At the bank, a manager with kind eyes explained that microfilm retrieval would take time, but the index showed cashier's checks purchased by Henry's trust on 3 dates matching Rose's letter. Purpose? She asked. Family records correction, I said. Truth adjacent. She printed the index. At the courthouse, the juvenile clerk pointed at the sealed stamp. You can't see the file, she said, but I can confirm the caption reads, in the matter of R.J.H. and that a guardianship became an adoption. She glanced at my binder. You're doing this carefully, she said. That helps. Marcus interviewed Rose's former housekeeper. Mrs. Rose paid in cash for some things, the woman said, eyes far away. She called it keeping my promises clean. We recorded her statement with her permission and wrote the time and date on the transcript. Evidence, gently gathered. 2 nights before the gala, I came home to the smell of charcoal. The fireplace was cold, but the trash bin in the alley smoked. Inside, black confetti. Photocopies, the parish address. A corner of the ledger with ink melted into tears. I pulled on gloves and sifted, fingers stinging as ash found the scratches on my wrist. In the bottom, I found a metal hinge coated in soot, the music box's latch. Mom stood in the doorway, hands trembling. I didn't, she said. I believed her. A shadow moved on the sidewalk and paused. Evening, Henry said from the fence, his smile pale under the streetlight. Big night coming. Don't get lost in paperwork, Claire. Henry was erasing tracks faster than we could pin them down. We moved fast. I scanned everything twice and stored copies in cloud folders with names that looked like grocery lists. Marcus arranged for us to use the community room at the library, neutral ground, for a family history night, the day after the gala, when Henry would be basking and less careful. We invited Mom with a text that said, to honor Rose. We invited Henry with one that promised to settle the matter of the slideshow. He responded with a thumbs up and a champagne emoji. At the gala, Henry floated. He thanked donors, teased future projects, called me, our in-house archivist, into a microphone that smoothed every edge. He wore trust like armor. Mom nodded beside him, composed and fragile at once. When the memorial slideshow ended, I caught a flash, a frame that wasn't in the draft I'd approved. A smiling young woman on a church step, a baby blanket peeking from the corner of the photo, the caption Community Sunday, 1975. The image was on screen for a heartbeat and gone. I caught the AV volunteer afterward. That extra slide? I asked. He frowned. Mr. Hale brought a last-minute USB, he said. Said it was essential. My veins went cold. Henry was laundering the past in real time, replacing it with a version that looked generous and dull. The next day, we set out seats at the library and stacked handouts, a simple 1-page timeline with footnotes. Mom arrived first, jaw set. Be kind, she murmured. Henry came 10 minutes late, smelling like citrus and applause. Very official, he said, tapping the binder. Shall I swear in? We'll start with documents, I said. I projected the bungalow deed, then the trust creation date, then the cashier's check index. These transfers align with a court caption for R.J.H. and a parish note naming R.J. Hollis as sponsor, I said. Rose's letter references accounts and a debt honored via that house. I clicked to the housekeeper's statement. Henry's smile thinned. Stories, he said. Coincidences. I clicked again, and the slide filled with a blown-up image of Rose's handwriting and the ledger. Mom made a sound like an old door. Henry leaned back, jaw working, as I opened the final tab. One last piece, I said, and pressed print on the bank manager's letter about the microfilm indexes confirming the checks were issued for family support. The printer whirred, and Henry watched our evidence spool into daylight. The bank's letter rustled in Henry's hand. He scanned, buying time. Family support, he read aloud, voice smooth. We are a family that supports others. Is this a crime? He tried to laugh, but the sound landed wrong. I advanced to the next slide. The notary journal entry we'd copied from an old ledger at the title office, the one where Henry had certified Rose's signature transferring the bungalow to the trust. Rose was competent, Henry said. She wanted this. The notary logged the time as 9:12 a.m., I said, and the title office's receptionist signed Rose in at 9:38 a.m. across town. I clicked to the scan of the receptionist's sign-in sheet. The notary stamp is real, I said, but the claim that Rose signed in front of him at 9:12 isn't. Mom inhaled sharply, a sound like paper tearing. Henry set the letter down. You think timing mistakes prove malice? He said. We were busy. Clerks misenter times. I breathed, kept my voice even. A pattern matters, I said. The trust bought cashier's checks the same day the guardianship became an adoption. The house moved off Rose's balance sheet the same week she wrote about keeping the child safe. And the church ledger shows R.J. Hollis as sponsor, not you. Yet you have paid the property taxes for decades, using family funds, for a house whose beneficiary is not documented anywhere in our family records. Henry's polish slipped. Documentation is a choice, he said. Privacy is a virtue. Rose wanted discretion. Marcus spoke for the first time. Rose wanted accountability, he said. She wrote ode. That isn't charity. Henry stood, anger flashing like a blade. You children have no idea what appearances cost, he said. I saved this family's good name. He turned to Mom. Tell her. Mom's hands shook. He kept us respectable, she whispered. He kept the doorbells from ringing at midnight. The room felt suddenly smaller. Henry lowered his voice. Say thank you, he told me. And stop pretending receipts make you a judge. The parish letter waited between us like a verdict wearing lace. Silence pressed against the windows. Mom closed her eyes. Henry's jaw flexed, a rhythm of refusal. I read the letter aloud. Ms. Hollis consented to contact through the parish if family sought her. The archivist had enclosed a photocopy of the form with the signature blacked out, plus a note. Record sealed by law. This is a courtesy confirmation. At the bottom, a postscript, MS. Hollis moved out of state in 2004. Forwarding expired. Henry's voice went flat. So what? A woman wanted attention. You've built a conspiracy around a ledger note. I kept my voice low. You held property for support, yet never disclosed the beneficiary to heirs, I said. You certified a transfer with a time conflict. You added a slide to whitewash the story. And you tried to burn the remaining paper trail. I glanced at the soot-flecked hinge in a plastic bag. Henry's eyes flickered. Mom spoke, words tumbling. We sent money when we could. We left groceries on steps. Rose wrote letters and never mailed them. Henry said publicity would hurt everyone. I believed him because I was afraid of the phones. She looked at me. I'm tired of phones. Marcus set a legal pad on the table. Next steps, he said. We petitioned to reopen Rose's estate to account for the bungalow. We asked the court for a constructive trust for the intended beneficiary or descendants. We file a notice with the parish that the family seeks contact. We ask the bank to preserve microfilm. And we tell donors that the foundation will separate from family assets until this is resolved. Henry laughed without humor. You'll bankrupt the foundation to parade your virtue? We'll keep the foundation honest, I said. You can stay on if you disclose and rectify. He stared at the binder, calculating. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The clock in the hallway ticked a harder rhythm. He heard the door unbolt. He couldn't hold it closed anymore. In the weeks that followed, the work was unglamorous and necessary. We filed the petition to reopen the estate. The court set a status conference. The bank confirmed preservation of microfilm and scheduled a supervised viewing. The parish archivist arranged a call with a liaison to discuss contact protocols. Records were sealed, but our intent could be logged. Marcus drafted a memo for the foundation board. Plain language, clear steps, no theatrics. We proposed an independent audit, a recusal policy, and a public statement about historic commitments. Mom started therapy with a woman who, blessedly, didn't speak in metaphor. I booked a few sessions too. I learned how fear had braided itself into our family story. Fear of scandal, of scarcity, of being small. The therapist asked what I wanted that wasn't revenge. I said, a map other people can follow. Henry sent late-night emails full of second thoughts, then morning messages insisting we had overreached. He missed one board meeting and arrived early to the next with a practiced apology. We will do what is right, he said to the room, then argued for a narrower audit in the hall. We held the line. Meanwhile, the neighbor by the bungalow texted a photo of a woman at the gate on a Tuesday, the caretaker with a new set of keys. We logged the date, the plate number, the time. One afternoon, the bank manager called. The microfilm shows 2 checks marked support, R.J.H., she said, and a third marked maintenance, B. Ave property. We scheduled copies. That evening, Mom brought down a tin from the back of her closet. I couldn't burn this, she said, trembling. Inside were 3 postcards from 2002, all unsigned, each with the same P.O. box as the trust, each reading, "Thank you, keeping the roof." We sat on the floor, knees touching. I'm sorry, Mom said. I was afraid being good would cost us everything. I squeezed her hand. Being good costs less than lying, I said, and it pays longer. When the status conference date arrived, Henry stood outside the courtroom door, face pale, and asked me if we could still handle this privately if he agreed to step back and repair the harm in writing. Henry asked for mercy. I asked for transparency, in writing, immediately. We negotiated terms in a dull conference room that smelled like toner. Henry signed a statement acknowledging that the bungalow had been held for the benefit of R.J.H. or her descendants, and agreed to transfer title to a constructive trust administered by an independent fiduciary. He resigned as chair of the foundation and accepted a role without control over disbursements. He pledged to cooperate with our efforts to contact Ms. Hollis or her family. I read each paragraph aloud so the words would land where excuses used to sit. After, I walked Mom to the park where Rose used to feed sparrows. The light through the oaks looked like thin coins. She wanted better, Mom said. She wanted us brave. I thought of the music box, the secret floor, the lilt of Rose's handwriting, for the one brave enough to look. I had looked, and the world had not collapsed. It had shifted, noisily, toward alignment. Weeks later, the parish liaison called to say a letter had arrived at their office. A short note from someone who identified herself as a relative of Rachel June Hollis, inviting us to send a message through the church if we wished. The liaison said there would be rules and patience. I said patience was fine. We had spent years practicing silence. Now we could practice listening. I made copies of the timeline and slid them into a folder labeled Family Map. I added a page of advice to my future self. Write dates. Ask gently. Keep receipts. Don't confuse quiet with peace. Invite help before the house is on fire. I placed the soot-blackened hinge on top, a small metal witness to the day the door pried open. My legs trembled with a fear that felt surprisingly like relief. We turned the key and stepped into a room meant for truth.